Hmm? Welcome everyone to our February 27th service. Whether you are participating in the service here in the sanctuary or viewing it on YouTube, I'm Margaret Baker, a member of Channing Church. I will be serving as the worship leader today and a bit later stepping over to join Janet Grant at the piano to sing. Charles Roberts will be presenting the message today, during which he will tell us about several people and places that are significant in Black history on Aquidneck Island. Many of you know Charles, but let me take a moment to fill in some biographical details. Charles is a native Rhode Islander whose family has lived in Newport since 1889. He earned his Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, attended Black Studies classes at City College, University of New York, and studied at the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences at CBS, New York City. A talented visual artist, he pursued graphic design at the Rhode Island School of Design and continued developing his pastel paintings, winning a juried show award at the Spring Bull Gallery, Newport, 2014. His work was chosen for exhibition in the 2018 and 2019 annual juried members show at the Newport Art Museum. He has also exhibited in group shows at the New Jersey State House Trenton, Newport Art Museum's Coleman Center, the Du Bois Gallery, Middletown, and the Hope Street Gallery, Bristol. His background also includes teaching art and TV production at the Chad Science Academy in Newark, New Jersey, 1994 through 5. Extensive travels throughout Europe and Africa, and concert production and promotion. If you are visiting us today and would like to know about future services and programs at Channing Church, please take a moment to fill out the card that is in the pew box as a guest. If you give us your contact and email information, you will be informed of events at Channing Church. You can give the card to the usher as you leave. If you've been watching the services on YouTube, I encourage you to send us an email to office@channingchurch.org to introduce yourself. Our Children's Faith Development Program has resumed in the Parish House. See our Family Minister Coordinator, Joanne Ritchie, to find out more about the program. They are beginning a study of Indigenous people. Everyone is invited to fellowship after the service in the Parish Hall. Or if you are attending today virtually, you can join others in a chat room on Zoom. The Zoom link is in Friday's e-news. We would like to thank Michelle Duboc, on tech today, providing audio and visual. And thanks to Cal as our usher and Jana Pedersen as our chimer. Charles, would you like to go up to the chancellery? Charles, would you like to prepare your computer? We'll just wait.
Oh, thank you very much. See, I have the technical assistant. Can I get John? Can you come up and plug me in?
And we will continue with the chalice lighting. We light this chalice to bring us together today. This symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith calls us to notice, calls us to listen, calls us to look, to see the world around us. And then ask, who is here? Whose stories are told in books and history classes? And whose are not? It calls us to travel the road to new knowledge and understanding of the people whose stories are not known, so that we may be aware of our collective history. can't find the reading.
Take a look.
There it is.
There it is. I'll do the opening words.
Okay.
Great. So today we are closing out our observance of Black History Month. But we do not end our task of learning about Black history, which we will continue to do in the months and years ahead of us. Over the past years, this congregation has done work to learn about the peaks and valleys of the American Black experience, about racism, about the legacy of our history in being involved with people of color. And we have been doing our homework. We've been doing our homework to understand how we can be better allies to people of color in their fight against discrimination. And yet, there's still work for all of us to do. Today's service is one more piece of that work that we are doing to find out about Black history here in Newport and around Aquidneck Island and around the state. Our presenter today will tell us about people and events that probably most of us don't know about, but are very important to us. And so we ask the question, why should we be doing this? Why should we do this work about learning about Black history? I think poet Miller Williams gives the answer not only to us, but to all Americans in his poem Of History and Hope. We have memorized America and how it was born and who we have been and where. In ceremonies and silence, we say the words, telling the stories, singing the old songs. We like the places they take us. Mostly we do. The great and all the anonymous dead are there. We know the sound of all the sounds that we bring. The rich taste of it is on our tongues. But where are we going to be? And why and who? The disenfranchised dead want to know. Where are we going to be? And why and who? The disenfranchised dead want to know. And that is why we are doing this. That is why we are doing Black history. That's why we continue to learn about Black history, so that in our future we will be better able to be people that live out our second principle, promoting peace, liberty, and justice for all. So now let us all join together and continue our celebration of Black history.
Our reading today is from an article by Lonnie Bunch, the founding director of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. Black history matters to everyone. It's a critical part of our nation's story. One can tell a great deal about a people, about a nation, by what it deems important enough to remember. What graces the walls of its galleries? What elements of a country's identity are featured in its national museums and narrative? I would suggest, however, that one learns even more by examining what a nation chooses to forget. What sins of the past, what decisions, and what groups are omitted from the national memory reveal not only a great deal about a nation's history, but about its current political and societal concerns. In the United States, what is often forgotten or undervalued is the history and the experiences of its Black citizens. Black History Month envisions a way to counter the invisibility of Black people and to challenge the negative imagery and stereotypes that were often the only manner Black people were depicted in popular culture and in the media. As scholars and political figures question the impact and importance of a month dedicated to one community, it is important to assess if Black History Month still matters. Or is it just an obligatory gesture that has become routine and meaningless? For me, Black History Month should still matter. After all, no one can deny the power of inspiration as a force for change. Yet simply providing inspiration is not enough to justify the month. The history that is shared during these months often focuses on the famous or the exceptional. While we should know the lives of Harriet Tubman or Rosa Parks, we should also recognize those often left out of our narrative of celebrity. It is important for the month to avoid romanticizing a history and to address the complexity and the ambiguity of the past. Rather than simply celebrate inventors, the month should explore the defeats as well as the disappointments, using history to educate future generations. That change does not come without struggle and sacrifice. Charles Roberts.
Oh, well, thank you very much, my beloved wife, an angel who reads to me a lot because I'm so busy studying and trying to make things happen. I need somebody to read to me and correct the bad spelling in my emails. So excuse me if you get any. The sentiments of Black History Month. And I first want to thank Pastor Bill and this church for allowing me to be able to speak here and share my experience of as you did from the first time I was here when we did Driving While Black, and I was able to share what that experience was like as a young man. And now I want to share the significance of Black history with you. Now, if you remember from anybody from yesterday, Carter Wilson is an African-American scholar who first announced Negro History Week in February 1926. Now, he chose that particular date, February, because it coincided with the birthday of Abraham Lincoln, which is February 12th, and Frederick Douglass, which is February 14th. The Black community had been celebrating both these dates ever since the late 1900s. One of the reasons that he decided to make a significant effort to remember Black History Week was throughout the 30s, he was trying to counter the growth of the myth of an argument that claims that the Confederates' war wasn't caused by slavery. It was a just, heroic cause, not centered around slavery at all. After all, these were country gentlemen. And so he's arguing this myth. It's a myth where the South blames the aggression of the North on festering up the Black people, where Black people felt they had it better off under slavery. And I'm going to tell you what an insult that is. I had a cab driver tell me when he knew who I was or recognized me, he says, "Aren't you glad that you were able to talk about Black history and how much better off than they were when they were in Africa?" Now, I've lived and worked in Africa, and I've been to the Great Pyramids. In fact, I've been inside the Great Pyramid, inside the King's Chamber. I was brought there by 12 people for a healing ceremony. And the sophistication by which the Berber tribes that I lived with in Marrakesh were, in their way of treating family, was so much on a higher level. I mean, they were Islam, and yet in that town, you had every race all celebrating at the same time. But when it came to going to the market, they were all the same people. And you could go into each one of them's house, and it was the same. You were in Africa. So to have someone say that to you, I always have to be polite and say, well, guess that's just a matter of opinion. Have you ever been there? So because I'm trying to make friends, not enemies, and we're also in a culture, a shared culture, and we have to allow everyone has to have their voices heard. So that's why Carter Wilson decided he was a teacher, and this is the point that Margaret was making. He taught that we're in Black history, it was essential to assure the physical and intellectual survival of a race without boundaries and social constructs that created their reality for them rather than the reality of themselves. And he also said, if a race has no history, it has no worthwhile tradition, it becomes negligible factor in the thought of the world and is in danger of being extinct. That's why I practice these acts of remembrance, because the memory that I'm trying to awaken isn't just the memory of Black people, it's the memory of us as human beings. And one of the principles that I love about this church is that the oneness of being with the who I call the source of all being. So, and in characterizing this history, this is me as Cato Green, a captured slave from Ghana who was sold in Rhode Island and fought in the Revolutionary War to obtain his freedom. He was a slave of Colonel Christopher Green, the American legislator and soldier who led the African American 1st Regiment during the Revolutionary War and fought the most notable battle here in Newport. I mean, and it was in Portsmouth in 1778, the Battle of Rhode Island. Colonel Green was killed in May of 1781 at a battle of Pine Bridge by American loyalists. And it's possibly he was killed in the way he was killed because he led Black soldiers. He also had Black bodyguards, Christopher Green and Cato Green and his servants protected him to the death. Cato Green, though, survived, and he got his discharge papers, and he served with the regiment for 5 years. And when he got his discharge, it was given to him in 1783 by General George Washington. This is when you get a chance to realize your place in history. And being a part of history and a part of the American paradigm. So I enjoy being a reenactor because I get a chance to live it. So RISHM is a nonprofit place-based education program dedicated to marking the landscape with bronze medallions that tell the story of the enslaved African and American, Native Americans who people of color in their cultural and economic contribution to the state of Rhode Island through their use of their free labor. The bronze medallions themselves are based on the work of an enslaved artisan, Pompey Stevens, who carved and signed the gravestone for his brother, Cuffey Stevens, in 1768. The significance of this is, first, he had a brother. His brother just wasn't in the same household as him. But after carving hundreds of stones at the William Stevens shop, he turned around and said, look, I'm going to carve all these stones because I'm your slave. I have no choice. But this one, I'm carving for my brother. And imagine the shock on his slave master's face, but imagine the empathy in his slave master's face when he said, well, okay, no problem, as long as you come back to do my work. So that's the significance of Pompey Stevens and why we use his angel image. Because it's a gravestone. It was carved for a slave by a slave. And what other way could we celebrate that transformation? And it happened during the transformation, by the way, to another thought, a paradigm where it wasn't hell and brimstone of the pilgrims, but we celebrated the fact that after death, our souls were carried on the wings of angels. All souls. That's why the gravestones were carved for all people, black and white, during the colonial period. Each Risham medallion is equipped with QR code technology. So by scanning the QR code with your phone or digital device, you can view the illustrated narrative history about the site, written by public historians, authors, and PhD experts that we're fortunate to have as part of our board, our advisory board. Now, this is the first medallion that was placed at Bowen's Wharf. And the significance of it is in 1800s, Newport was a major hub for the notorious slave trade. Most of the streets and most of the names that you see in the historic district are the names of persons that gained their wealth through the use of slave labor or investment in it. Everybody was involved during that time. Enslaved Africans were traded for rum, arrived and departed in ships, labored in the maritime trades, on the docks as workers and sailors and sail makers and carpenters and rope makers, barrel makers, producing the goods to be sold in Africa and West Africa. That is, if they weren't sold to a plantation in South County instead. The next place that we placed a medallion is a National Historic Landmark, and it's the grand home of the trading post of Roger Williams. He acquired it from the Narragansetts and sold it to Richard Smith in 1651. The medallion is a tribute to the 200 enslaved laborers that lived and died on that property over the 150 years as part of the Narragansett Planter Society. The Narragansett planters is where they grew the food to be shipped out of the country to be able to feed this massive amount of slaves that they were using as labor. Here is Patriots Park, one of my favorite places, because of my relationship with my Uncle Paul Games. This medallion honors the enslaved and freed Blacks, indigenous, who fought the pitched battle with the Hessians in August of 1786. The first battle of the war, the Battle of Rhode Island. Patriots Park commemorates the first regiment, first Americans. It was a first American militia, but it was an integrated militia because of Blacks, Indians, and indentured servants, and poor white kids that were sent, farm boys that were sent in lieu of having to send their masters to fight. And these soldiers fought brilliantly, and they marched, they fought brilliantly to the point that even the British had to compliment them for their bravery, because they were fighting crack Hessian mercenaries, and they beat them back. They fought all the way until the end of the war at Yorktown. I'm talking about the Black Regiment, that is. The next place we put a medallion as part of our tour of history of Rhode Island is in Jamestown, Wharf. Now, the institution of slavery permeated every facet of Jamestown's daily life, from Europeans settling in 1657 to the early 19th century. Even before Africans were brought to the islands, the indigenous inhabitants were captured and enslaved. I'm going to play for you right now, if I can, what it was like, what an act of remembrance is like. Because each time that you remember this history at a place, you're standing in history. And so we do our acts of remembrance at each one.
You know, it's so important that we connect to our history, especially the history of slavery in Rhode Island. Jamestown was a landing place right here for those people of color who were enslaved.
It may come as a shock to some of us here that the Jamestown Town Council in 1791 would have been in the business of selling human flesh in that time.
So to educate everyone about the impact that slavery had in the North and in our case, Rhode Island.
To remember that our people have been here for over 10,000 years.
And when we sing this song, it's saying, we are the people of this place. We are still here. We are strong, proud, and we are still carrying on.
With history, you've got to acknowledge it. Otherwise, we don't have a past and we won't have a future. So thank you so much.
That was Deborah Ruggiero, our state representative, one of our state representatives. Now, over the next 5 years, Richmond will place at least one medallion in each of the 25 cities and towns associated with the enslavement of people of color, and tell their stories of survival and endurance. And I'm finding out that I try to tell one story and 5 more pop up. So I've got my hands full. This is Linden Place. This is the home of the Wolf family. The medallion here honors the African people who were captured and enslaved by the famous, or the infamous DeWolf family, the largest slave traders family in America at that time. Although we're finding, as we start delving into other major people that with money during the colonial times, that they were as deeply involved in the slave trade as the DeWolves. The installment took place on Juneteenth of 2021. It was the first time to be able to celebrate emancipation of enslaved people in the United States. It's the first time it became a national holiday. And that's what made it so significant. at that location, we were fortunate. We have partnered with Roger University, and we have their undergrad students. And the students formed in 6 research groups, and they focused on the Black history in Bristol. And we're planning on moving forward with more collaborations with Roger Williams University and Charlotte Carrington Farmer, the major historian, in other locations. We have something coming up in Bristol this year. And we're also, and there's something else, in the next slide I'll explain it. And here's what it was like in Bristol during that time.
Hard history, unvarnished truth is a shared truth, and I'm here to help that process take place.
Charles Roberts,
Those
founder of the Rhode Island
those
Slave
in the
History
back,
Medallions,
they're
collaborated
the-
with the Roger Williams University students to hold a medallion installation ceremony at the Linden House Museum.
It's a moment where Bristol, particularly Linden Place, and on Monday, the Wolf Tavern, can own up to and acknowledge the enslaved peoples who lived here, who helped to build and run this particular house.
It was a day of remembrance, reflection, celebration, and teaching, specifically by the university.
It really matters to the university to be part of this. Roger Williams, our namesake, enslaved Indigenous peoples in the 17th century.
Every community has a story. Every community has people who have their own individual stories. And I feel like these stories really need to be told. They made up the community. They helped build the community, the town, the culture we have here. And without them, what would it have been like?
This is the Bristol community. And so to teach them a little bit about themselves, some things that they didn't understand, it's been really, really fun.
The Rhode Island Slave History Medallion will be installed right here outside of the front gates. All you have to do is scan the QR code with your phone, and hidden histories, even about where you're standing, pop up right in the palm of your hand. These slave history medallions are meant to start a conversation, one that can lead to healing and preserve the legacies of the enslaved.
The minute you stop speaking their name is the minute their story is forgotten. I don't want that to happen at all.
In Bristol, Christina Vitale, NBC 10 News.
You'll notice the indigenous people dancing because they're dancing on their land. So we did a healing ceremony there for the indigenous people who suffered and died and were enslaved before Africans came there. And in my next slide, whoops, here we go. Wait a minute.
I believe that
Here we are. There we go. Technology is not my thing. Have to excuse me. Our next slide was at the Wolf Tavern. And there we did a healing ceremony for the DeWolf family themselves, and they participated. And this is what happened. This is a healing ceremony. And by the way, we're going to start working with Roger Williams University to teach this to freshmen when they come into school. Okay.
Took a look in the mirror tonight, and what caught my eye was pure starlight hidden in my vision.
I'm Dane Perry. This is my wife, Constance. I'm a direct descendant of America's foremost slave traders. What Katrina wanted to do was deepen the national conversation on race. Through this film, she could get us talking together, because only by doing that will we be able to heal.
Call out your one feeling word.
Shame, dismay, discourage, regret, love, hope. So once we understand the past, we can begin to understand the present.
This attempt at healing is healing the collective memory. What the healing is about is within our cellular memory, we remember and keep pain and suffering that's been caused to us, no matter what nationality or race. Everyone here that's immigrated to the United States, at some point, their families suffered immense suffering to be able to allow us to be able to be here. So that cellular memory stays within us through lifetimes. And so one of the things we want to do for our younger generation, who doesn't have to worry, and like my kids, they don't know anything about dogs biting them. They can't imagine the thought of being attacked by mobs and lynched. We don't have to pass that mental construct to our kids. Our next generation can receive racial healing so that we can move forward as a country and a race. And this is the oneness that is the framework that is of the principles that I must say I deeply appreciate here at Channing Church. These are some of the Medallion installations to give you an idea. We've already done 2 in Bristol, we've done Bowen's Wharf, we've done North Kingstown, we've done Portsmouth, we've done Jamestown. Now we have 2 more installations to do in Jamestown because we had 3 locations that needed medallions. And then we have others under contract, the Colony House in Newport, the John Stevens Shop, the Stephen Hopkins Shop in Providence, and the James Driscoll Shop, house, in Warren. We're planning to do some events in Bristol, Coventry, at the Nathaniel Green House. That's the uncle to Christopher Green. And Rocky Hill School in East Greenwich. The kids there, they sent me a video explaining how they wanted to do their own ceremony. So I'm letting the kids do it, and I'm just helping by providing them the services they need, because these are 8th graders. These are our leaders. So to have them do a remembrance to slavery from their own hands is phenomenal. Let's see, we're also looking at putting a medallion at Trinity Church. In Westerly, we're talking to the Wilcox Library and the Babcock Museum. In Pawtucket, we'll be working with Old Slater Mill. This is the whole idea of making that landscape of remembrance across the state of Rhode Island, where tourists can come and see our history for themselves. Our other education program was in 2002, where we brought the movie Harriet to the Jane Pickens Theater. We gave 50 tickets to minority students to see the movie free and bring their families there. And it was a very empowering experience, because in this very town, we asked them to write just a dissertation, or just 1 page about what they felt about Harriet Tubman. And a lot of them didn't know that there was such a thing or a person as a Harriet Tubman who was an abolitionist. And some were empowered by her struggle for freedom, but some, be honestly, they hadn't known anything about abolitionism. And some were very enamored because it was the first time they ever got to go to downtown to the Jane Pickens Theater, because they didn't think downtown was for them. That was for tourists and white people. Now you're hearing this from 12 and 14-year-olds, and it's shocking. I promised Pastor gospel music, so here's a pre-recording of what we did at Jamestown. This is how it started.
Still gotta get up in the morning. Well, enough said about that. Still gotta get up
Yeah. This is based on a Negro spiritual, and one of the things that the lines in there, it says, no matter what, was the problem that caused you to be where you're at, you still got to get up in the morning. And that's why what helped fuel freedom for African Americans on Indian slavery. I have another one I'm going to play for you that is almost like the prelude to it. Okay.
Believe freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Till the killing of black men, black mother's sons is as important as the killing of white men, white mother's sons. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. That which touches me most is that I had a chance to work with people, passing on to others that which was passed on to me. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. The young people come first. They have the courage where we fail. And if I can but shed some light as they carry us through the day. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Struggling myself don't mean a whole lot. I've come to realize that teaching others to stand up and fight is the only way my struggle survives. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. A woman speaks in a voice, and I must be heard. At times I can be quite difficult. I'll bow to no man's word. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Oh, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
When I was in Africa, this is the type of tradition I heard from African people, but it wasn't considered gospel. There was just chanting and playing music. And so when I came back here, that's why I realized I had been at the feet of the motherland, where my ancestral culture and karma and cellular memory had grown. So I'm one of those people that been raised by a family that told me that you can't rest. You know, it's your responsibility to the rest of the human race to make sure that we're all free. And so that's one of the reasons I do what I do. Okay, this is another part of our education program. This was about the Black Regiment. I gave 25 books to Sankofa a connection for their students to read so that they could understand what it was like to be a Revolutionary War soldier and understand that actually in America, there was in Rhode Island, there was such a thing as the Black Regiment and the Battle of Rhode Island. And I asked them to read about their experiences. And then what we did was we did a live action ceremony, like an act of remembrance, so that the kids could remember their relationship with their families to the culture that has been cultivated on these grounds. These are some of the supporters that we have. And I told you about the winged angel. And I must say I'm very fortunate to have help from Nick Benson, who did the calligraphy for the Martin Luther King statue in the National Monument in Washington, D.C., and Allison Newsom, who taught me how to become a sculptor rather than just doing my art that I've done in pastel, and helped me bring this story to life in 3 dimensions. This final slide is the slide of the person that encouraged me to do this.
His Honor, Paul Gaines, my uncle, who it's because of him that I've been actually inspired to do this. I mean, ever since I've known him, we started, remember this was a rock in the back here, and now look at it. So it took, what, 15 years?
Well, 10 years to get it built, but longer than that, John.
So I'm just proud to be here with him now. So
Listening to say the talk that the gentleman gave was exactly the reason for having this story there, to get the history of Black African Americans, Native Americans in this community. And that's exactly what we talked about. He traced his history of his family. Think how many others up here can trace their part of the history once they find out what this stone here is 5 years ago. And that's what we thought.
The tradition at Patriots Park was started by my Uncle Paul when he became mayor, and he helped raise the money to build the first Black monument in Rhode Island. So I'm very honored to carry on that tradition for him, and that's his last performance before he died. So it's very cherished to me, and I wanted to share it with you. Let me go forward. Okay. So in conclusion, I just want to give this quote from Paul Robeson. And he said, an artist must take sides. He must elect to fight for freedom or slavery. I made my choice. I had no alternative. And in my life, because of the cellular memory and the collective unconscious and the source of all being that is the soul that animates my spirit, I have no choice but to fight for freedom. And this is the way I do it, because I'm doing this not for just us, but the children that's to follow us, which are the most important and cherished thing that we have, the future. Thank you.
We've come to the offertory moment. It's the short time in our service when we mix the secular with the sacred. We ask you to bring a small part of your secular world into the world of our church by making a financial gift. Your gifts are received gratefully to support the work of our congregation. This Sunday, that work is providing monetary support through our Share the Plate program to a local agency that is helping the community. 100% of what you give today will go to Conexión Latina, an agency in Newport established to meet the needs of the local Hispanic Latino community, one of those peoples that is too often invisible to the larger community, by creating connections, partnerships, and providing direct assistance. Your gift can be placed in the basket at the end of the center aisle or given electronically by going to our website homepage and clicking on the Give tile.
Will you join me now in the spirit of prayer? Spirit of life and of hope. We pause now after hearing stories of people and places this morning to remember there are stories all around us which are so often passed over. This month in our cultural calendar is Black History Month, created years ago to help us all know more about the lives of people of color. Help us, Spirit of Life. Help us and this country to realize that Black history is all of our histories. There are so many beautiful stories needing to be told. We need to get a chance to hear them. So may the day come when these stories are so widely taught that no special month is needed to bring them before us. But we know this day will not come until we as a people challenge and banish racist philosophies and racism that feeds amnesia and consigns people's histories to the trash heaps of history rather than bringing them forward. This is the great task before us. May we remember we are most human when we see the humanity of others. So now let us sit in a moment of silent meditation and reflection. For all of our thoughts and prayers, we say, Amen.
Glory, glory, hallelujah, since I laid my burdens down. Glory, glory, hallelujah, since I laid my burdens down. Feel like shouting, hallelujah, since I laid my burdens down. Feel like shouting, hallelujah, since I laid my burdens down. Like it's sweeter, so much sweeter, since I laid my burdens down. Life is sweeter, so much sweeter, since I laid my burdens down.
Terry and Craig Gaspard had their first grandchild on February 25th, and they're really, really very proud. They're over there if you want to congratulate them later. Okay.
Before we close, I want to really thank Charles for agreeing to do this service because we sort of dumped it on top of him with all the work that he had to do to put together the program yesterday. If you were not able to be here yesterday, take some time and go to our YouTube channel and check out the program. It was absolutely spectacular. Wonderful presentation information. The gospel choir was wonderful, and you saw the presentation of the medallion that is going to go on the Channing House down here in town. So our closing words are based off of the words of Max Kutz. Peace and justice have need of us. May the Spirit of life grant us the depth of dedication to justice, the will to be apostles of peace, the strength to be compassionate giver to all in need, and the radiance to spread joy wherever we go. So be it. Amen.